You're 25. You've got a degree, a decent job, you did everything right, and yet when you open Zillow, when you scroll through listings in your city, something feels impossible. A starter home, $700,000. Your salary, $60,000 a year. The math doesn't work, it never will. And here's the thing nobody wants to say out loud: it's not your fault. You're not lazy. You're not entitled. You didn't mess up. The system changed. And it changed so drastically, so deliberately, that the American dream you were promised is now statistically out of reach for most people under 40. This isn't a story about housing. It's a story about power, about money, about how a basic human need became the world's most profitable asset class, and how in less than 50 years, homeownership went from an achievable middle-class milestone to a luxury reserved for the wealthy and the lucky. Let's go back. 1950. Post-war America. The suburbs are exploding. White picket fences. Single-income families buying homes. The narrative is simple: work hard, save up, buy a house. It was real. It was possible. The median home price was $7,400. The median household income was $3,000. That's a ratio of about 2.5 to 1. Meaning, if you saved aggressively, you could buy a home in a few years. No generational wealth required. No trust fund, just a job and discipline. The government wanted this. The VA loans, subsidized mortgages for veterans, tax deductions for homeowners. Policy was designed to create a nation of homeowners because homeowners were stable. They voted. They invested in their communities. They didn't revolt. Homeownership was social engineering, sure, but it worked. By 1960, more than 60% of Americans owned their homes, the highest rate in the world. But let's be clear, this wasn't equal. Redlining kept black families out of wealth-building neighborhoods. The GI Bill benefited white veterans disproportionately. The American dream had a color barrier. Still, for those who could access it, the system delivered. You could work a factory job, buy a house, raise kids, retire with equity. That was the deal. Fast forward to the 70s. Something shifts. Wages stagnate. For the first time in American history, productivity keeps rising but worker pay flatlines. The economy grows. Corporate profits soar. But the average worker sees nothing. Meanwhile, housing prices start climbing. Slowly at first, then faster. By 1980, the median home price hit $64,000. Median income, $21,000. The ratio is now 3 to 1. Still achievable. But the gap is widening. Then comes 1986, the Tax Reform Act. A policy change that sounds boring but changes everything. It makes real estate investment more attractive. Suddenly, homes aren't just places to live. They're assets, investments. Hedge funds start paying attention. Developers start building differently. Housing stops being treated as a social good and starts being treated as a financial instrument. 1997. Another policy shift, the Taxpayer Relief Act. Capital gains exemptions for home sales. You can now sell your primary residence and pocket up to $500,000 in profit, tax-free. Homeownership becomes a tax shelter, a wealth-building machine. People start flipping, upgrading, leveraging. The market heats up. And then comes 2008, the financial crisis, subprime mortgages, predatory lending. Millions lose their homes, foreclosures everywhere. The crash is brutal. Home prices collapse. You'd think this is where regular people get a second chance, where housing becomes affordable again, but that's not what happens. Not even close. Instead, Wall Street sees an opportunity. Blackstone, Invitation Homes, American Homes for Rent. These aren't landlords, they're private equity firms. And while families are losing their homes, these firms are buying tens of thousands of properties. All cash, below market value. They swoop in during the crisis and buy distressed assets at a massive discount. By 2012, Blackstone alone owns 40,000 homes. They're not buying to sell, they're buying to rent permanently. This is the turning point. The moment housing stops being a path to ownership and becomes a rental empire. These firms securitize the rental income. They package it, sell it to investors. Housing becomes Wall Street's new profit engine. And everyday buyers, they're competing with billion-dollar funds that can pay cash, close in a week, and never need a mortgage. You can't win that fight. By 2020, the median home price is $329,000. Median income, $68,000. The ratio is now nearly 5 to 1. It's doubled since 1950, but that's just the average. In cities like Austin, Denver, Phoenix, Seattle, it's worse, much worse. Homes are 7, 8, 9 times the median income. Financially impossible without a windfall, without help from family, without wealth you didn't earn. And then the pandemic hits. 2020. You'd think a global catastrophe would slow the market. It doesn't, it accelerates it. Remote work explodes, people flee cities. Interest rates drop to historic lows. Demand surges. Supply investors pile in. Buyers Zillow tries to flip homes with algorithms. Crypto millionaires pay cash sight unseen. Bidding wars become the norm. Homes sell for 50, 100,000 over asking. Waived inspections, waived contingencies. If you're a regular buyer with a mortgage and conditions, you lose. Every time. By 2022, the median home price hits $420,000. In just 2 years, it jumped 30%. Wages didn't. Rent didn't stop rising either. You're stuck. Can't afford to buy. Can't afford to save because rent takes half your income. The trap tightens. Now let's talk about what this really means. Because the numbers are one thing, but the human cost is another. Delayed families. Delayed retirements. Entire generations locked out of wealth building. Because here's what people don't realize: homeownership isn't just about having a place to live. It's about equity. It's about generational wealth. It's about stability. When you rent forever, you build nothing. Your landlord builds equity. With your money. Every month you pay their mortgage. You fund their retirement, and you get nothing but a lease. But to understand why this isn't just bad luck or market forces, why this is actually a manufactured crisis with clear winners and deliberate losers, we have to look at the math that nobody wants you to see. The math is brutal. Let's break it down. You're 25, you make $60,000 a year. After taxes, you're taking home about $45,000. Rent in a mid-tier city, $1,800 a month. That's $21,600 a year. Almost half your take-home income, gone, before food, before car payments, before student loans, before anything. Financial advisors say you need 20% down to avoid PMI and get a decent rate. The median home is $420,000. 20% is $84,000. How long does it take to save $84,000 when you're spending half your income on rent? Let's say you're disciplined. You save 10% of your gross income. That's $6,000 a year. It'll take you 14 years to save the down payment. You'll be 39 years old. And that's assuming home prices don't rise, which they will. At the current appreciation rate of about 5% annually, that $420,000 home will cost $700,000 by the time you've saved enough. Your down payment target just became $140,000. You'll never catch up. The goalpost moves faster than you can run. This is the mathematics of impossibility. And it's not accidental. Every part of this system benefits someone, just not you. Let's talk about supply. Basic economics, right? High demand, low supply, prices rise. So why isn't supply increasing? Why aren't we building more homes? Because at every level there are incentives not to. Zoning laws restrict density. Single-family zoning covers over 70% of residential land in most American cities. You can't build apartments, can't build duplexes, can't increase density. Homeowners fight new construction because it might lower their property values. NIMBYism isn't just annoying, it's policy, it's enforced. Every public hearing, every city council meeting. Existing homeowners show up to block new development. They've got equity to protect. They're not villains. They're rational actors in a system that rewards scarcity. Developers aren't helping either. They're not building starter homes. There's no profit in it. Land costs too much, materials cost too much, labor costs too much, permits take too long, so they build luxury units. High-end condos, McMansions. The profit margin is better. A developer can make more money building 10 homes at $800,000 than 20 homes at $400,000. So that's what they do. The market doesn't build what people need. It builds what's profitable. Then there's private equity. Let's go deeper on this. Blackstone didn't stop at 40,000 homes. By 2023, institutional investors own over 600,000 single-family rental homes in America. Some estimates put it higher. These aren't mom and pop landlords. These are funds with billions in capital, and they have advantages you'll never have. They buy in bulk. They get discounts. They can waive inspections because they have in-house repair teams. They can close in days because they don't need mortgage approval. They can outbid you on every property and still make a profit because they're not trying to live there. They're trying to extract yield. Here's how the business model works. Buy a home for $400,000, rent it for $2,400 a month. That's $28,800 a year. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, maybe $10,000. Net operating income $18,800. That's a 4.7% cash yield. Not amazing but stable, and it appreciates 5% a year. That home is worth $420,000 next year. That's another $20,000 in equity. Total return 9.7%. Better than bonds, better than most stock, and it's backed by a hard asset. Housing Wall Street loves this. They bundle these rental incomes into securities, residential mortgage-backed securities. Institutional investors buy them. Pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, insurance companies. Your rental payment gets sliced up and sold to investors in Tokyo and London and Dubai. Housing isn't local anymore. It's global capital markets. And when global capital competes with local buyers, global capital wins. Every time. Now add in interest rates. For 40 years rates have been falling. Cheap money. Easy credit. That inflates asset prices. Housing, stocks, bonds, everything. The Federal Reserve keeps rates low to stimulate the economy. But who benefits? People with assets. People who can borrow cheap and invest. If you already own a home, low rates are great. Refinance, lower your payment, pull out equity. But if you're trying to buy, low rates mean more competition, more buyers. Higher prices. You're not competing with your neighbors anymore. You're competing with hedge funds leveraging cheap debt. Then 2022 happens. Inflation spikes. The Fed panics. Rates skyrocket. From 3% to 7% in 18 months. The fastest increase in 40 years. Now here's the perverse part. You'd think higher rates would cool the market. Make homes more affordable, they don't. Because existing homeowners are locked in. They refinanced at 3%. Why would they sell and buy a new home at 7%? They won't, so inventory dries up. Supply drops even further. Prices stay elevated. But now your mortgage payment is double what it would have been 2 years ago. Same house. Double the cost. You're getting crushed from both sides. Let's run the numbers. $420,000 home. 20% down. $336,000 mortgage. At 3%. Your monthly payment is $1,417. At 7%, $2,238. That's an extra $9,800 a year. For the same house. And remember, you're still trying to save that $84,000 down payment while paying $21,600 a year in rent. The math doesn't just fail. It collapses. Here's what nobody tells you. The system isn't broken. It's working exactly as designed. Housing is the largest store of wealth in America. $33 trillion. More than the stock market, more than all retirement accounts combined. And it's concentrated. The top 10% of households own 70% of all real estate wealth. Homeownership is the primary way middle-class families build wealth. But if you can't access homeownership, you can't build wealth. You stay working class. Forever. This is wealth extraction by design. Every month you rent, you transfer wealth upward. To landlords, to investors, to private equity. You're not a tenant, you're a revenue stream. Your housing insecurity is their asset class. Your inability to buy is their opportunity. The system needs you to rent. Because if everyone could buy, who would rent? Who would generate that 4.7% yield? Who would pay off their mortgages? There's more. Let's talk about inflation, real inflation. Not the CPI, not the government's basket of goods. Real costs: housing, healthcare, education. These are rising at 8, 10, 12% a year. But your wages, maybe 3% if you're lucky. The gap widens every year. You're getting poorer in real terms. Your purchasing power erodes. But asset owners, they're getting richer. Their home appreciates. Their stock portfolio grows. Inflation helps them. Debt gets cheaper. Assets get more expensive. If you own nothing, inflation destroys you. If you own assets, inflation enriches you. This is the greatest wealth transfer in modern history. From the young to the old. From renters to owners, from the working class to the asset class, and it's accelerating. Every year, homeownership rates for people under 35 drop. Every year, the wealth gap widens. We're creating a permanent renter class, a neo-feudalism where landlords extract rent and renters have no path to ownership, no eco-stability, no future. Some people say it's a personal failing. Avocado toast, lats, spending too much. That's propaganda. The data doesn't lie. Adjusted for inflation, wages for young workers are lower than they were in 1980. Housing costs have tripled. Student debt has exploded. Healthcare costs have quadrupled. You're not failing to budget. The economy is failing you. Others say move. Go somewhere cheaper. But where? The affordable cities don't have jobs. The cities with jobs aren't affordable. Remote work helped for a minute. Then people from San Francisco moved to Boise and Phoenix and Austin and priced out the locals. There's nowhere to run. The affordability crisis is national now. Even small towns are expensive. And it's not just America. Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, anywhere global capital can flow, housing becomes unaffordable. Sydney, London, Auckland, Toronto, same story everywhere. Investors, speculation, asset inflation, locals priced out. This is a feature of modern capitalism, housing as commodity, shelter as investment vehicle, human need as profit center. So what happens next? What does a society look like when an entire generation can't own homes? When wealth doesn't build? When stability is impossible? When starting a family requires financial help from parents who might not have it to give? We're already seeing the consequences. Birth rates are plummeting. Americans are having fewer children than any generation in recorded history. And when researchers ask why, housing costs are consistently in the top 3 answers. You can't start a family in a 1-bedroom apartment. You can't raise kids without stability, without space, without knowing you won't get evicted because your landlord wants to raise rent or sell the property. Homeownership used to provide that foundation. Now it's gone, and we're watching the social fabric unravel in real time. Retirement is next. The generations currently retiring are the wealthiest in history. Not because they worked harder, because they bought homes when homes were affordable. They rode 40 years of appreciation. A house bought for $60,000 in 1980 is worth $600,000 today. That's $540,000 in equity. That's retirement. That's long-term care. That's generational wealth passed down. But millennials and Gen Z, if you never own a home, you never build that equity. You reach 65 with nothing but a 401k that might have $200,000 if you're lucky. That doesn't fund 30 years of retirement. That doesn't cover health care. You'll work until you die, or depend entirely on social safety nets that are already strained and underfunded. Geographic mobility is dying too. You used to be able to chase opportunity, get a better job in another city, move, relocate. But when you're renting, moving is expensive. First month, last month, security deposit, application fees, moving costs. That's $10,000 to relocate. And what if the new city is just as expensive? What if you can't find an apartment because landlords want income verification showing you make 3 times the rent? The flexibility that defined American labor markets is evaporating. People are stuck, economically immobile, geographically trapped. Communities are hollowing out. When homes become investments instead of residences, neighborhoods change. Short-term rentals, Airbnbs, investment properties sitting vacant. Streets that used to have families now have rotating tourists and empty units. Nobody knows their neighbors. Nobody invests in local schools or parks. Social trust collapses. Crime rises. The things that made neighborhoods valuable in the first place disappear. But the prices don't fall. Because the value isn't in the community anymore. It's in the asset. Political consequences are coming too. Already, polling shows young people are abandoning capitalism. Not because they read Marx. Because the system isn't delivering. The promise was simple. Work hard. Play by the rules. Build a life. That promise is broken. When an entire generation is locked out of wealth building, they stop believing in the system. They stop voting, or they vote for radicals, for populists, for anyone promising to burn it down. The stability that home ownership created is the same stability its absence destroys. Some governments are trying to respond. New Zealand banned foreign buyers. Canada imposed speculation taxes. Some US cities are trying inclusionary zoning, requiring developers to include affordable units. But these are band-aids on a gunshot wound. The problem isn't policy tweaks. It's the fundamental financialization of housing. As long as homes are treated as investment vehicles, as long as Wall Street can buy neighborhoods, as long as scarcity is profitable, nothing changes. What would actually work? We know the solutions. They're not complicated. Massive public housing programs. Vienna has it. Singapore has it. Governments building affordable housing at scale, not Section 8, not housing projects. Beautiful, high-quality, mixed-income housing that anyone can access. It works, it's proven. But America won't do it, because it would lower property values, and property owners vote. We could ban corporate ownership of single-family homes, make it illegal for private equity to buy neighborhoods, treat housing like food and water, restrict it to actual residents. Would Wall Street scream? Absolutely. Would it work? Immediately. Inventory would flood the market, prices would fall, homeownership would become accessible again. But it would destroy billions in asset value, and the people who own those assets have power. We could eliminate single-family zoning, allow density, allow fourplexes, allow missing middle housing. Tokyo does this. They have affordable housing in one of the world's largest cities because they allow building. Supply actually meets demand. But American homeowners will fight this to the death, because density means their home might not appreciate, their investment might not pay off, and they've been promised that it will. We could tax vacancy, tax speculation, tax foreign ownership, make it expensive to hold property without living in it. Vancouver tried this, it helped. Not enough, but it helped. But enforcement is hard. Loopholes emerge. Capital finds a way. The truth is, none of these solutions will happen at scale, because the people in power are the people who benefit from the current system. Lawmakers are homeowners. Donors are real estate developers. The wealthy own multiple properties. They're not going to voluntarily crater their own wealth. They'll make speeches, propose studies, fund commissions. But nothing structural will change, because structural change requires sacrifice from people who don't want to sacrifice. So what do? You're 25. You're reading this. You're realizing the math doesn't work. What's your move? Some people say educate yourself, invest smarter, max out retirement accounts, build wealth through the stock market. And sure, that's better than nothing. But it's not the same as home ownership. It's not stability. It's not community. It's not a place that's yours. And during the next recession, when the market crashes, you'll lose 30% overnight. You can't live in a 401k. Some people say get creative. House hack. Buy a duplex, rent out the other unit. Use their rent to cover your mortgage. Live for free while building equity. It's a good strategy if you can execute it. But you still need the down payment. You still need to qualify for the mortgage. You still need to compete with investors. And in most markets, the numbers don't work anymore even for house hacking. Some people say leave, move to another country, Portugal, Mexico, Thailand, places where housing is affordable and quality of life is high. Digital nomads are doing this. Remote workers are doing this. And honestly, it might be the smartest play. But it's also an admission of defeat. An acknowledgement that the American system has failed you so completely that emigration is the only option. Some people say wait for the crash. Housing bubbles always pop. Wait for the next 2008. Prices will fall. Then you buy maybe, but maybe not, because 2008 taught Wall Street how to profit from crashes. They'll buy the dip again, faster than you, with more money. And if the government bails them out again, if the Fed steps in to protect asset prices again, there might not be a crash, just permanent elevation, permanent unaffordability. Here's the dark truth. For most people reading this, you will never own a home. Not in the traditional sense. Not a single-family house with a yard in a decent neighborhood. The math doesn't allow it. The system doesn't allow it. You'll rent forever. Or you'll scrape together everything for a tiny condo in a mediocre location that you'll be underwater on when the market eventually corrects. You'll spend your life paying off a mortgage on a property that never appreciates enough to matter. You'll retire with some equity. Not enough. Never enough. This isn't pessimism. It's probability. It's math. The wealth gap is widening. Asset prices are rising faster than wages. Home ownership rates among young people are at 60-year lows and still falling. The trend line is clear. And unless there's massive systemic intervention, massive political will to restructure housing markets, this is the future. Permanent renting, permanent precarity, permanent wealth extraction. But here's what they don't want you to understand. This didn't happen by accident. This isn't natural. This isn't just markets being markets. Every policy decision for the last 40 years has contributed to this. Deregulation of finance, tax incentives for investors, zoning restrictions, interest rate manipulation, bailouts for banks, austerity for people. Every choice was made by someone. And those choices created winners and losers. The winners own assets. The losers pay rent. And the psychological weight of this is crushing. You were told you'd have what your parents had. A home, a family, stability. security, the ability to build something, but that's not your reality. And it's not because you failed, it's because the rules changed. The ladder was pulled up, the door was closed, and now you're supposed to just accept it. Work harder. Be grateful for the opportunity to pay someone else's mortgage, to build someone else's wealth, to fund someone else's retirement while sacrificing your own. This is the quiet rage of a generation. The unspoken understanding that the system is rigged, that the dream is dead, that everything you were promised was a lie, and that anger is justified. It's rational, it's appropriate. Because you're not crazy. The math really doesn't work. The system really is broken, and the people who broke it are still in charge. So no, you will probably never own a home. Not because of your choices, but because of theirs. And until we collectively decide that housing is a human right and not an asset class, until we choose people over profits, community over capital, nothing will change. The extractive economy will keep extracting. The wealth will keep flowing upward. And another generation will be sacrificed to protect the investments of the one before it. That's not the future we deserve. But unless something fundamental shifts, it's the future we're going to get.